My thought is that doing the things that you can with the resources that you have in order to differentiate yourself as much as possible is very valuable. And if your resources allow it for you to get a master's degree, an advanced degree, or to differentiate yourself in that way, absolutely do it, right? Where you went to school is significantly less important than what you can do. And later on, that's something I found that I really liked, right? Is that, hey, like my job prospects, my opportunities are directly related to the quality of my work and the output, not what my diploma says.
Welcome to Richmond Alake podcast. This week, we are speaking with Kenji. Kenji is a renowned data science content creator with over 200,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel and over 80,000 followers on LinkedIn. Professionally, Ken is the head of data science at a consultancy company where he focuses on sports analytics. In our conversation, Ken speaks on the importance of differentiating yourself from the competition within the field of data science and largely AI. We explore the advantages of content creation and visibility within the industry as a data science practitioner. We also dive into Ken's educational background and his motivations for studying data science. I'm Richmond Alake, and one person at a time, I'm exploring the stories of the humans behind AI and data. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and come away a better practitioner. Thank you for listening.
There's one question I've been meaning to ask you. I've been watching a lot of your interviews and your videos as well. You always mention the fact that you transitioned into data science by basically associating data with your goal. I actually wanted to ask, what inspired you?
So it was a very selfish endeavor, to be perfectly honest, right? I was playing golf at a relatively high level. I was playing in college. I had aspirations to play professionally, and I wanted to do anything to get better. Something that a lot of people weren't doing were looking at the data and analyzing their game in a more sophisticated way. And while I didn't have necessarily as many physical tools, I was good, but I wasn't the most talented person out there. I wasn't the most physically able person out there. But what I did have was the ability to analyze my performance in a different way than the other people. At that point in my life, I was historically a very bad student, but I was starting to realize the power of statistics, the power of math. And I saw that as a really unique competitive advantage that I could create for myself to outperform my competition. And that is really how everything started was, hey, how can I get better? What are other people not doing? What resources or stones are completely unturned that I can dive deep into? And that just opened up this huge new domain. I opened the closet, I walked into Narnia because there's so much there, right? There's my performance, but then there's other performance, there's model building, there's these different things. And it transformed my worldview. It's like Pandora's box. Once you open it, you can't go back. And in this case, it was a really good type of Pandora's box.
Your educational background is very interesting. You have your economics major and you also have a master's in computer science. But you actually had a gap in between your education before you went back for your master's. The question is, what made you go back for a master's, particularly in computer science?
So I actually have another master's degree, which is in global commerce, which is a business related domain. So after I quit playing golf, I realized that I fell in love with the sports analytics space and I wanted to learn more skills that were relevant to that. And I didn't know how to break into that career. So I started to think about what career path could I go down that would give me the best opportunity to break into any career path that I wanted to, whether that was sports analytics, whether it was something else. And I settled on management consulting. To me, that is a career set where you build a lot of skills, mostly interpersonal skills that you can scale to almost anything. Computer science, coding, it really wasn't on my radar at that time. I was starting to realize that I might need more than just Excel to do the sports analytics work, but I hadn't really fully gotten there yet. And so I applied to grad schools to do my best or give myself the best opportunity to break into consulting. And so I didn't go to a target school, which for consulting, they recruit from specific schools. Not all schools are included where they go on campus and recruit. And I went to a master's program where I was like, okay, this is a target school. I can break in. There's been people from this program who have gone to big three consulting firms, and I can go down that route.
What is a target school?
So a target school is what people would consider like a quote unquote elite institution. So the Ivy League schools, all of the consulting firms recruit from there, like Stanford, UC Berkeley, in this case, the University of Virginia, Duke. They are places where like big consulting firms go to recruit. But where I went to undergrad, Towson, it was a fine school. I learned a lot, but McKinsey, Bain, BCG did not go on campus there to recruit. And if you're not at a target school for consulting, it's almost impossible to break into one of those roles. It's doable. Like people have done it, but it's usually like a mid-career transition, not like, hey, he was just playing golf and trying to break in. And like the real barrier there is just getting the interview, right? Like me going to this program was just so I could start to get those interviews. Before and after, getting those interviews was so much easier just because you have a stupid university on your resume at that point. Honestly, this is where I started to get a little bit disappointed with the interview process and consulting in general. I don't think it's like that in technical careers as much, right? Like where you went to school is significantly less important than what you can do. And later on, that's something I found that I really liked, right? Is that, hey, like my job prospects, my opportunities are directly related to the quality of my work and the output, not what my diploma says, which was unbelievably frustrating for me. Because I thought before I went to this program, and I still believe that, like I was as qualified as a lot of other people, I just went to the wrong school, and that infuriated me. But, you know, I'm someone that like, I'll play by the rules, I'll play by the system if it's something I want. But if I don't have to, I will not be doing that. I'll trudge my own path. But kind of going back, so I went back and I learned those skills, or I was trying to learn those skills and break into that career path. And before I went back, I applied to a graduate internship at this company called DraftKings. And so DraftKings, they are the biggest daily fantasy sports organization, I think, in the world. And they do a lot of sports betting and stuff like that now. But I was exposed to a whole mess of things. I was exposed to people using SQL, R, and Python to make decisions. And that is a whole world that I had never had exposure to in like a more corporate setting. Like I saw what companies were doing with analytics, and it was so far beyond what I was doing with my Excel spreadsheets and improving my performance. And so when I went to Virginia, I did learn some SQL. I did learn some more advanced statistics. Granted, we were using like SPSS to do this analysis, but that was a big turning point for me where I realized I've learned enough to get a job in consulting, but I want to learn these other skills. Where can I do that? And at the time, there weren't as many YouTube courses where I could learn these things. There wasn't as many online courses or boot camps or certificates. The main path that I saw to be able to do that was going back to school to get my master's in computer science. I was also looking at data science programs, but there are two reasons why I did not do that. So first, although I was a pretty decent student late in my college career, early in my college career, I got a D in calculus. And a lot of the data science programs had a math requirement that I could not pass unless I went back and did another class, which I did not want to do. The second is that I am very interested in entrepreneurship. And I thought a computer science, more specialized skill set would allow me to build things beyond just what the data science skill set would. And at that point, I was still like pretty wet behind the ears regarding what data science was in general. I was like, why don't I just do computer science, learn that domain? If I have business and computer science, I'm like 2/3 of the way there to what data science is. I just have to pick up a little bit more math.
People would see that we are good at maths. And that is a sort of like a rhetoric that a lot of entry-level data scientists or enthusiasts in AI take on. And it might even deter them from actually taking on AI courses in university because they feel like they're not good enough to actually do the maths. What is your take on it? Now that you're the head of data science and also you create a lot of data science content, how important is learning maths and actually knowing maths to actually utilize the data science tools, models, and libraries that are available online?
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't go as far as saying that I'm bad at math. I wouldn't say that I had a lot of math aptitude, and that wasn't my focus. I will say that from the calculus days, I was bad at math, right? But what you learn as a data scientist is that you have to have a growth mindset. You have to get, just because I was bad at math then doesn't mean that in the future I can't become good at math or have that aptitude there. I'm a firm believer that in the early stages of breaking into this field, the math is less important, right? Like what's important is you get your hands dirty, you're coding, you're building things, you're putting projects together, because through that process, you're going to intuitively find where the math is valuable and important, right? Like when you're model tuning or choosing what model to use, that's when the math is relevant, because you're gonna be like, okay, with this type of model, I can't use this type of distribution. Why is that, right? And that reveals to you a reason for you to study like the dynamics of the model and like some of these different things, or you're understanding how implementing a neural network, and you're like, oh, what is this gradient descent thing? I have to understand how this works. You're going to have to understand some of the math then, but you're also going to want to understand the math then too, right? Because it's unpacking this puzzle. You have a reason to learn the math or to understand it there. And I think that that's the missing piece for a lot of people, is that they're like, oh, I just have to learn the math, and they don't have anything to stick it to, right? They don't have a reason to learn this math. It's just doing it for the sake of learning math, because as a data scientist, I have to be good at math, right? Okay. And so to me, like sort of inverting that equation and saying, all right, when am I going to need the math? Like for me, it was easier to learn the math when I needed to learn the math than just learning it all up front. And, after I've realized the importance, I've gone back, I've reviewed a lot of calculus. I've reviewed a lot of discrete math and linear algebra and these types of things. But I couldn't find the motivation in myself to do that until I saw the real value that it created in the machine learning space, or in any of the things that I do. So I wouldn't go as far as saying like the math isn't important, right? But in order for a lot of people to learn the math, they have to see for themselves why the math is important in the space. And to me, that's the real secret that isn't being told.
One thing I noticed in your story is, in order for you to progress within a certain direction, you revert back to education, right? You go back to get a master's to be able to get into the consultancy group, or to be able to actually be exposed to programming. But that was a couple of years ago. Do you think times are still the same? Because right now, there's always the debates. Should new students go back to school to get a master's, or should they just watch YouTube videos and then have a few portfolio projects and apply for a job? What's your take on that?
So I don't think that there's a one size fits all approach. I love all the resources that are out there, certificates, free online YouTube resources. I think like Free Code Camp has a lot of good, completely free stuff as well, right? And to me, there is all of the information that you would find in school online, either for free or for very cheap, right? I do a lot of stuff with 365 Data Science. I think they have a great product. I've made courses through there, and they're like affordable, right? Like we're talking like 50 times cheaper than my master's degrees were, right? And so to me, the idea that you need school to advance, or you need a degree to advance, in the next 5 to 10 years, I expect that will completely evaporate. Like the stigma of self-taught or online learning is very rapidly going away. Again, as I alluded to earlier, what you can do, not where you learned it, is of increasing value. And like companies are waking up to this. Google put out a certificate program, and if you do that program, you can get a job as a data analyst at Google, right? In theory, you don't need a college degree, you don't need anything. As long as you do that program and you can do good work, that's what they care about. And that's a highly efficient thing, right? If we're talking about the global economy of student debt and those things, which I understand is a little bit bigger of a problem in the US, but to me, like, isn't that model better? Like if in the future, companies are putting out specific coursework that prepares people for the specific job they'd be doing at the company, that's significantly more of a cost savings to them than having to retrain employees on the job. that might be going down a rabbit hole. But yes, I think that everything that I learned could be done online. On the other side, for me personally, I learn really well in a classroom setting. I learn like when there's grades and there's other people in a classroom and I can talk with them. We work on assignments together. There's that collaborative nature. Frankly, even me having to pay out of my own pocket for education at a high level means that I'm going to focus on it significantly more. And if people can't like afford to do that, like frankly, I'm in a lot of student debt still. I like regret that part a little, quite a bit. But those things, those external pressures that I put on myself around a university or educational setting like that, they help me to really ingrain myself in a topic because I realize like, oh, I'm not just doing this for fun. There's like stuff on the line. And that's what I need to do to program myself to be effective. And for those that don't have to do that, I probably don't have to do that as much now that I've matured a little bit. But, there's no reason to go into debt unless one, you can afford it. Like you have job opportunities lined up, which in some ways that I did. And if you can learn it on yourself, do not pay for education. Like do not in any way, shape or form outside of like a certificate or something like that, because you have the X factor. You can do it on your own. You can pick it up.
Can I play devil's advocate here? Do you think having the master's or the advanced degree put you ahead of the competition? Does it make you stand out? Does having a master's degree help you stand out from what is an overcrowded market?
So I think you really hit the nail on the head. In a way, yes, absolutely. A master's degree, it differentiates you in a way, right? Where like there's people who don't have master's degrees. This is the group that does have master's degrees. Employers inherently view them a little bit differently. The key thing though is the standing out. If someone can do something that is different from the other candidates in a positive way, whether that's an incredible portfolio, whether it's some very unique work or volunteer experience, I wouldn't put a master's degree necessarily above those other things, right? It is absolutely one way to stand out. And, frankly, it was a benefit to me that I did my master's in computer science compared to data science, because a lot of the programs in the area, all of their master's in data science students were applying to the same positions that I was. And I was different because I was coming from a computer science master's and I had very unique business skill set and quite a few other things. My thought is that doing the things that you can with the resources that you have in order to differentiate yourself as much as possible is very valuable. And if your resources allow it for you to get a master's degree, an advanced degree, or to differentiate yourself in that way, absolutely do it, right? Again, if you're willing to put in the time and effort. And to be perfectly honest, like I talked about how the school environment fit really well for me. I also really like higher education. Like it buys me time to do other things, right? You have resources from a university, whether that's employment, whether it's like an entrepreneurship center or things like that. I mean, there's plenty of other good reasons to go back to school. In my mind, if it's specifically just to land that job, it becomes an opportunity cost thing, right? I'm paying X amount of money. I'm investing this specific amount of time on someone else's schedule. If I use that exact same amount of time and that exact same amount of money to invest in my own personal projects, if I was to use those to pay for resume resources, whatever it might be, is my return on investment in terms of getting a job going to be higher or lower or whatever it is? And I think in most cases, it's actually going to be higher if you're investing actually all that time into the specific things that you want to learn that are focused on landing a job. With all those other benefits added in that I just described, university resources, all these other things, that makes the equation very unique to the individual. I don't think we can have a one size fits all answer to this. I mean, to be completely transparent, if I was asked, would I redo my master's in computer science just for me personally, I probably would. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I met a lot of friends. It gave me a lot of structure that I needed. On the flip side, like if 31-year-old Ken rather than 24, 25-year-old Ken had that decision, and let's say I didn't do it then and I was tasked to do it now, I probably wouldn't, because I'm at a different point in my life. like the resources outside of that setting have evolved a little bit. And so there's like, these other factors that go into play, which I think is what makes it fun and like a little bit of a self introspection process as well. Like the better you know yourself, the better you can make these decisions and see if they're right for you.
There's another benefit of going to university or any sort of higher education institution, and that is the people you meet. You meet some really interesting people. You meet some clever people. When I went to my master's, I was exposed to some of the smartest people I've ever met, and I was just amazed at how intelligent someone can be. And I would agree with you. I spent a lot over in the UK. The master's degree was a lot, and I'm still paying it off. But if I had to do it again, I would, because you're right. You do get enough time to do some other things and to focus on maybe yourself and just to take a break. But then when I came out and I realized, oh, wow, I could have, everything I learned is on YouTube, on like the Stanford courses or on Udemy or something. I was like, okay, maybe they should reduce the prices of this degree. I don't know. I don't know what the solution would be.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point. One of the reasons why I recommend that people almost go the other way is because I think there are very few people that utilize all the resources that the university presents correctly. Like, for example, when I was doing my master's degree, the teachers, I wouldn't say they hated me, but I spent so much time in their offices during office hours because they literally are forced to spend time with you. Like they have to, like, right? Like you can learn, you can ask these questions, like, and nobody else used them when I was there, right? It wasn't like a line out the door to have 30 minutes to spend with this computer science PhD who understands this topic in its entirety, right? Like that's a good use of that money that I'm spending, right? If people are thinking about it like that, to me, then yes, you're getting your money's worth. But if you're just going to like kind of like mosey through the classes, not do side projects and get this degree, the piece of paper itself is going to be worth a lot less than the projects you created along the way, what you've learned, and the story you're going to tell coming out of that program. So I think one of the things that frustrates me, I wouldn't say frustrates me, but one of the things that I routinely see is that people do these programs and then they don't have good opportunities coming out of them because they didn't put in the work and they didn't do all the other stuff that they should have done while they were there. So to me, there's this stigma that like, oh, if I get this degree, everything will work out. It's like, no, if you get the degree and use the resources correctly and do what you're supposed to do while you're there and work on projects and like actually capitalize on it, then absolutely it works out. But if you just go and coast through and think this piece of paper that you get at the end is gonna give you a great career in life, you're delusional.
In terms of standing out and differentiating yourself, what is the unique way that you've essentially done that? What is a unique way that is maybe out of the box that not a lot of people think about? Mine was writing Medium articles. No one was doing that at the time. And that was unique for me.
So, I mean, there's a couple different ways. And I think the unique way is a combination of a bunch of fairly normal ways, right? Like that's the beauty of differentiation, is that it doesn't mean I have to, like, I could differentiate by being the best Python programmer out there, right? But that bar is really, really difficult. And I am certain that I will never get there, right? But if I'm an incredibly good Python programmer, and let's say I know everything there is about Kubernetes as well, those two combined will make me more unique than a lot of other candidates, because I have an MLOps exposure. I know how to use this tool very well, but I also, if they need me to do Python, whatever it is, right? Let's say it's also like a domain expertise. We're working in agriculture and I know everything that there is to know about like soil temperature or something like that. Combined with Python and Kubernetes, those three things make me even if I'm not like the best in the world at those three things, if I have above average knowledge of those three things, that makes me more unique than someone that has like general knowledge of every topic or just like specialization in one of those things, especially depending on what the employer is looking for. So I've sort of taken that approach with my entire resume and my portfolio is that first, like from a data science perspective, I was an okay data scientist, like C plus B in terms of the quality of the code that I write, my documentation, a lot of those types of things. In terms of communication and my ability to explain my work, because I was coming from consulting, I could do that in my mind a lot better than pretty much anyone else. You know, I was also coming from this master's in computer science program. And I think that everyone in those computer science programs, in the program I was in, was very smart. But if we're looking at an on-campus interview, because of working on my communication skills through consulting, I came off so much more professional than pretty much everyone else. So just based on the interview pool that I was in, I had a built-in advantage in communication skills by a long shot. So if you combine the communication skills with my business knowledge, with my ability to at least like meet the strategic minimum for coding and data science, it was really hard to not look at me like a desirable candidate then. And that's when I was looking at my first roles, my internships, and those types of things. And so how can I enhance my communication skills even more? Because I think that that is a strength of mine. That's something I want to harp on. Well, I can start making videos. So I started making YouTube videos. It was mainly for me. So there's two reasons. One, I didn't see the resources that I was looking for when I was trying to learn data science. Like there was no roadmap for data science when I was doing this, especially coming from consulting. So how, I think one of my first videos was how I went from consulting to data science, right? So if someone was in that domain and they wanted to make that transition, I made the video that I wish I had had at the time. The second thing is I saw making videos as the single best way that I could continue to improve my communication skills. There is no better way in my mind, aside from maybe podcasting, to improve your communication skills other than talking into a camera and watching it back. You learn so much about yourself, about your diction, your filler words, all these different things. And that practice helped, right? I was able to become a better speaker, but it also created content and a story behind me and something that was searchable and something that was unique. I think I chose video because a lot of people are afraid to put themselves on video as well, right? The competition in the video space versus the blogging space, in my mind, is a lot lower because, frankly, a lot of technical people are a little bit more introverted and they aren't as comfortable putting themselves out there like this. So I said, hey, that's something I am comfortable doing. I'll put myself out there, whatever it is, and I'll, build on that and continue to build on it. And so that is what started the real competitive advantage that I have now, which is I have this whole portfolio of video. I have this whole portfolio of data science projects. I have this whole portfolio of, blog posts. I have this whole portfolio, well, not as a portfolio, but I have all these connections on LinkedIn that have come from producing these things. And the best advantage you can have, or the best competitive advantage you can have, is the ability to attract employers to you rather than you going out to get them. And by building all of this content, I make employers, recruiters, anyone relevant aware of my presence just from these algorithms that are pushing my content. Like I don't have to do anything. I get people to come to me rather than me searching for them. I usually refer to this as like a concept of gravity, right? If I create all of this content, if I'm putting myself out there, if I'm sharing my journey, I'm creating this critical mass, right? I'm building this like a planet, like the planet is getting bigger. We know from physics that a bigger planet has more of a gravitational pull. So the more things that I build and add on to this massive content, the more pull that I have of employers and opportunities and friends and whatever it is coming to me. And to me, that is the holy grail of competitive advantage, is that if I, rather than going out to get something, have all the things that I want coming to me, and I've created a system for that, like what else do I need? Right?
That's very good, isn't it? I've heard you say it a couple of times, but it's always interesting just to hear you say it again, that the fact that if you can create a bunch of digital content on the internet, articles, portfolios, videos, that firstly differentiates you from everyone out there because no one is intentionally doing that. And you create more of this content, eventually it will start to pay dividends. You start to have more opportunities coming your way, and you don't have to wait too long. As in, I would say you'd have to wait too long. As long as you just put enough content and be consistent, you will see one or two or more opportunities come to you. How would you approach being visible, letting your manager notice you? And you said a lot of technical developers are introverts, right? How would you let your work speak? How would you advertise yourself? How would you be the next person considered for the promotion?
There are so many scenarios where producing content outside of work that is at least somewhat relevant to your work can help you to get that promotion or to get noticed or to get recognized. I mean, the beauty of like an intranet at one of these companies is you can share things. And it's not just sharing things that are produced internally in the company, it's sharing things like a video that's outside of the company. Like if you're working on personal projects, assuming you're still doing a great job at your actual job, then people aren't going to look at that in a negative way. That is like great publicity. That is a great way to get notoriety. I mean, it's in one of the companies that I worked at before, everyone knew me as like, oh, he's that guy that's making YouTube videos. And they all knew who I was because that was the like title that was attached to me at the certain time. On the flip side, if you do want to do things completely internally, I love the idea of like internal virality, right? Is that you can create something and it gets shared and shared and shared and shared. And designing a lot of your prototypes or products or reports or any of these things to be shared and very easily digestible is one of the most important and valuable skills that you can create. So let's say I make a dashboard and it's easy to use, people love it, it helps someone with a very specific task. If it's helpful to them, they're probably going to share it with someone else. If they're going to share it with someone else, they're going to share with someone else if it's solving a common problem. And honestly, I think that you can start to develop that skill by thinking about what gets shared on the outside as well, what gets shared on Twitter, what gets shared on Instagram, what gets shared on LinkedIn, whatever it is. And if you're improving like your external shareability, that helps you to understand what might be really shareable internally as well. So I look at those as very much the same skill and very much complementary. There's a couple of friends that I have at Amazon, at Google, even at Facebook, where them doing their own thing, it looks really good on the company, right? Like I just interviewed someone this past week on my podcast who works at Facebook and just wrote a book on Streamlit. And like, that looks, to me, outside looking in, that looks great for Facebook as well. Like we're talking mostly about his book, but Facebook still gets a name drop for someone doing pretty impressive stuff on their own. A lot of these people become unofficial spokespeople for the company. And to me, that looks great on the company. Like if the company is okay with them having their own careers, if they're very public about it, or not having their own careers, having their own side hustles or speaking or whatever it is, there's very few instances where that looks bad. And, you know, every one of those people is like, oh, like, you know, my views don't reflect that of the company, but they work at the company. They still have this attachment. And Amazon, for example, has the perfect, like, oh, like they're the perfect out if they need it. And so in my view, the future is going to be a very hybrid environment. Like I see a world where everyone is using social media, right? The line between like professional career and opportunities, careers outside of your main work, side hustles or whatever it is, I don't see that becoming like less accepted. I think it's going to be more and more accepted and almost expected in most roles if people like to produce that type of content.
Can I ask you a fun question?
Of course.
Okay. How can a data scientist prepare for the metaverse?
Prepare for the metaverse. That's interesting. I think experimenting with different types of data is the first one. Like the data that we're getting that we would be exploring in the metaverse is going to be significantly in like way higher dimensions. It's going to be a lot more like image related, but not just 2-dimensional images, 3-dimensional images. So understanding how to work, or at least starting to think about how you model those types of things, in my mind, is a really good first start. Also anticipating what some of the problems are going to be, right? I think a low-hanging fruit is like physics related problems. Not that physics has to be perfect in a virtual environment world or an augmented world, but that to me is a place where a lot of people are going to be exploring and learning. And then, you know, I always think it behooves data scientists to understand like the development a little bit more, like what language are metaverse third party applications going to be in, you know, like what does this look like, and brushing up on that or exploring that.
What resources helped you in your learning, in your journey, learning about data science? Because that's what a lot of people generally are interested in. How did you learn what you know now?
So historically, admittedly, in grad school, I did most of my reading from books, my learning from books. Like I've always, from like late in college, I like fell in love with reading, and it also is a way for me to detach from the distractions of technology. That's a way I learn really well. And it wasn't until late in my computer science grad school where I found the power of YouTube and learning these things online. But honestly, for me, the way that I learn best is if I like struggle with something on my own and go at my own pace. The like pacing for me is one of the most important things. And for videos, I don't have as much control over the pace to begin with, right? I can like maybe speed it up or slow it down. But if I'm reading a book, I can reread the same thing over and over again and until I understand it. And that was really how early on at that stage of my learning journey, I found the most effectiveness. And again, the nice thing about school at that time was that they told me all the books I was supposed to read, right? I didn't have to go out and find these resources on my own. Now, if I were to you know, so since I'm so steeped in video and YouTube and doing tutorials that way, I learn very well from video now. I mean, it's very cool to see that like my learning experience can transform as well. And one of the nice things there is I've met a lot of friends and I've seen some really incredible content. I love Josh Starmer's YouTube channel. That's something that if I had known about sooner, and I think that when I was in grad school, it was before he really started to get more into the machine learning concepts. So I might have just missed him a little bit, but he has an incredible and like super fun and exciting way to learn a lot of these statistics concepts, which I review and watch now to understand things. So you know, just thinking about how powerful that could have been, you know, 5-6 years ago when I was learning through those things the first time. I'm also a huge proponent of looking at things from different angles. So if I want to go and learn a new topic or understand a new topic, I'll do a Google search. I'll open like 10 windows on like different explanations of the same thing. And I'll read through each of them and try to form my own explanation of what it is. And then I'll watch a couple of videos and I'll do this and that. I like try to get as much of a diverse understanding from a bunch of different people, from a bunch of different resources, from a bunch of different mediums to tackle that challenge. And so in school, you obviously had the medium of reading and then lecture, right? Now we have like a bunch of different mediums. Like I could, in theory, right, I could like read a blog post, I could read a formal textbook, I could watch a video, I could watch a lecture, I could listen to a podcast on the topic. I have like 7 or 8 different dimensions even that I could explore and understand this same topic from. And to me, that's a huge key for accelerating learning, is like realizing that maybe 1 or 2 of those different mediums are going to resonate with you, but finding the right medium that tells you the explanation or explains the topic in a way that makes sense to you is going to be one of the most important things.
I second that. That's very true. And like the YouTube channels you mentioned about Josh Starmer's YouTube channel, what's the phrase he uses? Bam?
Bam, yeah, on StatQuest. Bam, double bam.
Those channels are literally gold, because they take a topic or a concept that might seem complex and they break it down in a way that the general populace can actually understand. You can explain it to a 5-year-old and they will understand what's going on. And the animations are great as well. Do you yourself think data scientists should focus on monetary value initially, or is it something that they should start approaching later on?
So I don't think you should like start learning data science because you think you'll become a data scientist
Yeah.
to earn a lot of money one day, right? Like you can make as much, if not more, as a good software engineer. And I think the barrier to entry is a little bit lower with the software engineer. Not that it's not difficult to get in, not that it's not an incredible career, but like you're focusing on the coding. In data science, you have to learn coding, math, and business, right? You have to learn three things compared to just one, and earn essentially like comparable, potentially even less as a data scientist, right? So that's one thing that frustrates me when I see people like trying to break into this field exclusively for the income when they could be making a similar amount of money doing something else that they might enjoy more, they might enjoy less. Like if you like the field, right? If you like the work that you're doing, if you're interested in the topics, but you want to get paid. Everyone wants to get paid. That's totally fine. But but there's a prerequisite that you have to at least have some semblance of enjoyment for what you're doing. So to me, like if money is what you're after explicitly, and you don't care about the work you're doing, do not go into data science. Again, on the other side, if you enjoy this type of work, absolutely care about how much money you make or care about the value add or the packages that you're getting, right? Like I personally took a fairly large pay cut to work with my current company because it allots me a lot of freedom to create content, to do these other things outside of work that frankly do make me money. So, I'm a big believer that, find the work, find the roles that maximize what you're interested in. And what I'm interested in is a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom, ability to choose some of my projects. Like to me, that is worth a lot more than dollars and cents. But, if you're focused on providing for a family, if you're focused on building wealth over time for whatever reason, you want to buy a really fancy house, whatever it is, like I'm not going to judge anyone for that. Like absolutely, you should be wanting to maximize your value that you're getting from a company. And if that value is in money, if that value is in time, if that value is in something altogether, like let's say they're paying you in chocolate bars and you freaking love chocolate, like great, right? Like, yeah, exactly.
How did you get to become the head of data science at our consultancy group relatively very quickly?
Well, so I think that's like a lot better broad question about the company itself. So, I worked at a couple fairly large, I interned at one very large, not tech company, but company GE, right? We talked about. And I later worked at a company called GoHealth, which was in the health insurance space, now a $1 billion plus public company. When I was there, was still in a big growth phase. And I hate corporate bureaucracy. I hate rising through the ranks, like playing well with everyone. Like I just want to work on the things that I enjoy and try to create as much value and see the value of my work. When you're working in these big companies, it's very hard for me to see the value of my work. And that's not something that everyone cares about. Very much like the income stuff, what value you get out of work could be very different than what value someone else gets. Like someone else might be like, hey, I get this paycheck. I get to do this very specific thing every day. Great. Like I don't have to see where my work goes. I know that I'm doing something meaningful. I am the opposite. Like I would rather see my model go into production and see it helping create value and make less money than like my model goes into a black hole and I make a significantly more money. That's just how I'm wired. I have no motivation if I don't see the outcomes. But so I've been working with Scouts even like when I was starting my master's in computer science. It was a company that one of my friends started, and I grew up playing golf with him. He'd seen all of my golf analysis I was doing internally, golf analysis I was doing externally. And, he went and he pitched the PGA of America to win this contract to help with the Ryder Cup and do the analytics for them. And so I was able to just be brought in at the very early stages of this. I was the only one doing the pure technical work. The other people were either on the finance side or were from like a more consulting framework. And so early on, I was in a position where I was a data scientist in this role. And there weren't very many other sports related data scientist roles. Like I essentially made for myself the position that I wanted. Like a data scientist in golf, I was probably one of the first. Like I don't think that there was really anyone aside from Mark Brody, who invented strokes gain, who was doing like that specific type of work that we were analyzing. And now there are a lot of the big golf companies, whatever it is, have hired data scientists. But at the time, I had to go and create the role that I wanted and start doing the work. And fortunately, at that time, I got paid for it, right? And so as the company has grown, I've been able to take on more responsibility. I've been able to shape what all of our data science projects look like, what all of our deliverables look like, and be able to work with some awesome employees to make that happen. And thinking about the company as a whole, as we've grown, I've been in charge of all of the data science strategy. I've been in charge of all of the implementation for that. So I talked with the owner, the founder, and I said, okay, well, like, look, I am doing everything that a head of data scientist does, right? At first I was like, I'm doing everything that the director of data science does. And he's like, okay, like, can I change my title? I don't really need a pay raise. Like, this is part of something that I love. I was early in doing, and like, frankly, the company was very small at the time. Like, I think me asking for a pay raise would have necessarily been bad for the organization, because like, I want this thing to grow. I'm less concerned with how much money I make than seeing the future success of this organization. But I was like, hey, like, I'm doing a lot of work. Can I give myself a title improvement? And then as things have progressed, as we hired more people, as we started working on more projects, I said, okay, like, can I give myself a head of data science title? Because I'm doing exactly what that person would be doing in any organization. And this is also going to help with our marketability, right? If I have a higher title and I'm speaking with a lot of clients, I mean, I'd say 70% of my work now is face-to-face with clients, right? And from a consulting perspective, that gives me more respect, more authority, whatever it is. So moving up in title is a lot easier, one, in a small organization. But two, if you have a really strong selling point of like, hey, like, me improving my title can actually help the organization with our sales funnel, with like getting credibility from clients, whatever it might be, then it's really not that hard. I would also say, if you don't see a position out there, go out and try and make that position. I alluded to my internship at DraftKings. This was 10 years ago, but it was a little less than 10 years ago, but I digress. When I went online, I looked in to see if they had internships, and they had one internship for like undergrad students, but I really wanted to work there. It was a company I cared a lot about. I used their product. I sent them an email. I said, hey, I'm a grad student. I'm looking to do analytics. Are there any opportunities? And they made a position for me there. For that summer, they made a new internship for me to come in and work and help out. To me, like, creating your own opportunities, if they don't exist, is the best way to skip the line, right? It is the best way to get to the place that you want to be. Because if you're qualified to do these things, or if there's opportunities to do these things, like, there's no reason why you should have to wait. Oh, like, it's 2 years before he gets promoted. We only do promotions this time. We only do XYZ. Like, if you're doing the work and you're qualified to do the work, one, you might as well ask, or you might as well just go somewhere or find a position or make this position for yourself.
That's very inspirational. Firstly, to be able to, not a lot of people are in the positions where they can actually go into a company at the early stages, but a lot of people can actually develop their skills and actually look for opportunities outside of what they're currently doing and grow into roles and actually create opportunities where they aren't. And you are very proactive at a very early stage of your career. And I guess that paid off, and very patient as well. Because some people might not have the patience, and they would have taken probably a pay rise, the value of a pay rise, down to the value of being the head of data science. What I got from that was essentially patience, and as well as waiting, do work and just make the opportunities for yourself, create space where there is no space, and create your own path. That's what I got from that. And that's very inspirational. I thought there was nothing I thought there was nothing for in my current position where essentially I can grow within, but I haven't yet explored as to what other roles can I create with the skills that I have that I'm not using. What does the company need? And would that put me in a better position, that get me a better title, that could potentially put me in a better career path in the future? So yeah, very inspirational. Very inspirational. I'm going to ask a few closing questions.
Sure.
So this question is more for what would you advise be for data scientists that are just for entry data scientists that are looking to get into the field? If there was one thing you could tell them, what would that be?
So this is very jaded by my own personal story, but it's to show your work and share what you're working on, right? So you can create a brand, you can create a story just by sharing the journey, right? It's not about telling people what to do. It's not about giving advice. Like I try very hard not to give very hard and fast advice in the content that I produce. I say, these are the things that I've learned, or like I've talked to XYZ people from my podcast or from these other things, and these are the things that I'm hearing from them. And like, this is their journey and this is their story. I'm never going to say to someone like, hey, you should learn coding first, then you should learn math, and then you should do this. What I say is that, okay, in my story and for what I would recommend based on my experience, I say, okay, like for most people, probably learning to code first and then moving into the math and these things makes sense. Not for everyone, not one size fits all, because everyone has their unique way of learning and their unique experience. Like you can't criticize that. Like you can criticize someone saying, do X, Y, Z because it's the right thing to do. And I think people are really hesitant to make content and to produce it and put it out there because they think that they're going to be judged on their work, right? But very few people judge the journey, right? If you're sharing like, hey, I just started this project, I'm working on it, the type of judgment you get will be like positive feedback that'll make you better. It's not going to be like, oh, why are you sharing this? Don't do this. It's like, no, everyone shares. Everyone has Instagram. Everyone's posting like pictures of their dogs and like what they did at the park yesterday and stupid stuff. Like people posting themselves like, oh, I'm in the bathroom, like whatever it is. But like people love the journey, right? You look at the most successful videos on YouTube, they're like vlogs where people are just like going through their day. And that signals to employers, to other people that you're working, you're improving, you're doing stuff, you're doing data science work. You're not just like, you're part of that process and you're improving, you're building your portfolio. That would be really my biggest thing, is just create, share, put it out there. Like, I think most people, especially in this community, are pretty nice and they're not going to be super judgmental, especially if they know you're learning and you're trying to better yourself. Like, what type of asshole is like, oh, this person's like trying to improve themselves and learn, and I'm going to like rain on their parade? There's something wrong with them if they're doing that, not wrong with you.
What is Ken going to be doing in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. So I really enjoy what I'm doing now. I love producing content. I love putting it out there. Realistically, I'd probably like to start another company, maybe more specifically related to a data science service or an application of data science techniques. I don't necessarily know what that's going to be, but I love entrepreneurship. I love building things. And frankly, the content creation work, I love it, but it is also very time consuming, right? Like, I have to continue to produce things. I have to churn them out. It is like this continuous cycle that I put myself into. And, do I see myself for the next 30 years making videos every week? I think that would be a bit of a grind as a lifestyle. And so I'd love to be able to build something that is a little bit lower maintenance after some time. Obviously, working on any project or entrepreneurial venture is hard work. And for at least a medium period of time, it'll be a lot of effort. But after, the goal is to build things that scale and can be self-sustaining and can create value for people and are exciting to think about and work on and be a part of. And so in this chapter, I'm loving what I'm doing and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. But I'm always thinking about the next chapters and what to build and what to create and where to go. But there's no clear clear path. You know, this year I'll probably make a lot of videos. I'll probably make another course or two, and then just see what opportunities come my way and have fun with them.
Just keep building your planet.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Thanks a lot. Very inspiring conversation, and I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week, we'll be speaking to Nick Singh, one of the co-author of Ace, the Data Science Interview, an Amazon best-selling book.